Kevin Sorbo, producer, director and actor in God's Not Dead and Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist comments, Revelation 9:11 is an exhilarating ride. This book is unbelievable, a tour de force, the passion, the explosive insights into what is really happening today. I couldn't put it down. Pastor Paul Begley and Troy Anderson are prophetic voices for this generation. Anderson is amazing in his investigative analysis of things happening today, and Pastor Begley's revelations are incredible. It is, without a doubt, the prescient narrative of our time. Prepare to be captivated by the mysteries and prophecies unveiled within its pages. Get ready to embark on an unforgettable journey of spiritual insight and revelation. Don't miss out. Grab your copy of Revelation 9:11 now and delve into the depths of prophecy like never before.
Mr. Marzulli, it's a great honor to have you do this interview today.
The honor is all mine, absolutely.
So this will be for a book called Revelation 9:11. How the book Revelation intersects with today's headlines. And I'm co-authoring with Pastor Paul Begley. And maybe a good place to start out, if you could, we're also hoping to post this on our various YouTube channels around the time the book comes out. So maybe just give you a little bit of background about yourself and probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I left the Catholic Church at 13. The Beatles came in with Eastern mysticism. A couple of years later, I was all into it. I remember Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, devoured it. I became very interested in Eastern mysticism, especially after the death of my girlfriend. I was 18, she was 16. She was hit in a hit-and-run car and killed, which really changed everything. It was like a wake-up call, like, what is this? All of a sudden, the illusion of youth and living forever was completely shattered. I mean, 16 years old, unbelievable. And, that really led me on a quest to God. And of course, I wound up in Eastern mysticism and was with a guru for 4 years actually. And I wrote and arranged for a 56-piece orchestra. The guru's brother was the head of that orchestra. So I flew to England, I played synthesizer and wrote and arranged and learned how to write and arrange for a 56-piece orchestra, which was just an incredible musical education, as it were. I was very disillusioned when we came back to the States with the whole thing. I had been meditating for, like I said, about 4 years, and I was just the same schmuck I always was. In other words, that what I would call now as a Christian, the sin nature, nothing had changed there. I was meditating, I was astral projecting, I had spirit guides, all this nonsense, but I was the same guy. And what amazes me is walking with the Lord for 43 years. Every now and then I get a tap on the shoulder, and today is one of those taps where remember where you came from, lest you get puffed up. Remember where you came from. That if I hadn't come to him 43 years ago, I would be dead in my sins. I would have died in my sins. So, it's not lost on me at all. So I left the guru at around 24 years old, and it'd be another 6 years before I would finally come to the Lord. I became a music minister, a worship leader, because once I left the guru, I started a rock band, and we played at all the clubs over Los Angeles. We were in and out of studios. We had producers and managers and almost record deals and all this stuff. And we played at a lot of places. And I look back at it now, and it was the hand of the Lord going, you're not going there, because if you go there, you'll never come out, which is true. If I had gotten the deal, I'd probably be more than likely be dead by now. I wouldn't be going on 73 years old. So I became a born-again Christian, became a worship leader. And for 10 years, I was very content doing that. And then slowly, at the ripe age of 40, he began to shift the ministry. Although at 40 years old, I didn't really see it coming. But that culminated in the first book, which was published by Zondervan, Nephilim, which turned into the Nephilim trilogy. And it would be another 10 years before it really started to shift over. And I had no idea where I was going, what he was grooming me for. But I realize now that I was created for such a time as this. It's 13 books later, 25 films, and we're working on 26 and 27. I speak all over the place. I never knew I could speak publicly. I had no desire to speak publicly, nor to create films, nor to write books when I came of the Lord. 43 years ago. And this is what's amazing about him. He knows who we are. He knows who he's created us to be. We don't. I remember Chuck Missler was saying, the two most important, and I think he borrowed this from someone, I'm not sure where the origin of the quote is. It might be Mark Twain, but the two most important days in a person's life is the day he's born and the day he finds out why. And it took me years before I found out why. Now I get it. I mean, I totally get it. And just recently, he's allowed me to go back and start recording piano music. I'm a composer, and I write this sort of neoclassical, semi-virtuosic. It takes me a while to get it in my fingers, so it's somewhat virtuosic on some level. But I realized that although I love music, and that was, I would say, well, that's my first love. Well, that's wrong. Not that it's wrong, but that's not my first love. My first love is what I'm doing now, talking to you, talking about the Lord, talking about the end times, where we are, where all this is going, what we see in the news media, how it's being unveiled, unrolled. And it's, there's a couple of sayings I coined, but one in particular was UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. So, here I am. I'll be 73 in December, and 13 books, 25 films. And by the time this airs, it'll be 26 and 27 films. So there you go.
That's absolutely amazing. About a decade ago, I read I.D.E. Thomas's incredible book, The Omega Conspiracy, about the Noah's flood, the Nephilim, and the ongoing UFO phenomena. I noticed in your biography that he's one of your mentors. You wrote the foreword to his book. Would you tell me about Dr. Thomas, your relationship with him, and how you became interested in this topic?
Well, a friend of mine said, well, what about life on other planets? And I didn't have an answer for that. So I went down to the Christian bookstore and I said, what have you got on extraterrestrials? And the lady kind of looked at me funny. This is circa, 1990, 1988, 89, 90, somewhere in there. And she takes me down. There's a couple of books on the shelf, and one of them it was a different cover, but it was The Omega Conspiracy by Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. And I took it home and read it, and that book changed my life, literally changed my life, because in it, he answered the questions that had plagued me as a Christian for 10 years, and I had no answers. Noah's flood. Why the flood of Noah? Why confuse the language at Babel, Tower of Babel? Why destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? What's going on here? Who is Jesus? I got the God of the Old Testament. Not so fast. I'm not signing up for that guy. He seems, capricious, maniacal, like he's got this obsession with wiping people off the planet. And I remember reading the Bible for the first time and getting to the promised land, the conquest of the Levant, and almost taking the Bible and throwing it against the wall. I can't do this. That's genocide. I read Dr. Thomas's book, and it was like all the dominoes just went click, 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 right down the line. And I realized that, wow, he just explained what had bothered me and plagued me for a decade, almost a decade. And so I called him up. He lived in Century City, and he was a pastor at this church. And I called and set up a meeting with him and had this long conversation. I brought some of my research with me. And one of them was, you remember, I was born of a new age. And so there was a book that came out by Edward Billy Mayer in 1976, 4 years before he would become a Christian, UFO Contact from the Pleiades. It used to be in my library, but my library burned in the 2018 fire. We won't go there. Lost everything, but be that as it may, but the Lord brought good out of it, and here we are, right? Back on the homeland, brand new house, everything's paid for. Hallelujah. It's his hand, not mine. It's his hand steering, guiding, providing, Jehovah Jireh. And so I said, I showed Dr. Thomas the book of Enoch, and because he referenced that a lot in his book, The Omega Conspiracy, and he knew the passage from the book of Enoch talking about Semyaza. So he read that, and I said, now look at this. And I handed the UFO Contact from the Pleiades by Edward Billy Mayer, which has a quote from Semyaza. Is it the same? And he just looked at that and dropped the book, and his mouth dropped open, because he wasn't steeped in the New Age like I was. So I kind of bring a new kind of and there's others out there. Josh Peck, certainly, he comes from the New Age, and now he's born again and spirit filled. And I was involved, which is a great honor, in helping him cross the line. Although, it would be years before he would tell me that. It was just like, what? How did this happen? Because I'd forgotten about it. When you're ministering to people, it's like it's in one ear and out the other. You pray and you move on, and that's like prayer lines. I don't remember what I prayed. I remember what I said. It was just an anointing for that period of time. The Lord showed up, and He dealt with people. I was just the instrument. That's all. That's it. And Dr. Thomas was not steeped in New Age, and that's strictly a New Age tome. And this is well before the days of the internet. This is, circa 88, 89. So, the internet is like barely in existence. I mean, it's there, but not like it is today. So in order to get that book, I had to drive to get not Dr. Thomas's book, because that was in a Christian bookstore, but to get the book by Everett Billy Mayer, I had to hop in the car and drive down to the Bodhi Tree. I believe it was in West Los Angeles. I'm just making a guess. I forget where it was, but all the way down there, get out of the car, walk into the Bodhi Tree. I'm looking for a book by Everett Billy Mayer. And, finally I get it, and I pay my money to come back and read it. Today, it's all different, isn't it? You go to Amazon, one-click shopping, and it arrives on my doorstep 24 hours later. It's just like, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, I remember that bookstore. It's a great bookstore.
There you go, right? So we would go out to lunch once a month. He became my mentor on some level. He came and saw the production when I was the music director at the Malibu Vineyard of He Is Risen, which was fully orchestrated, sort of, again, neoclassical, fully orchestrated piece. The soloists are just incredible. We sell that on the website. But, music is the back seat. Music is the back seat. The Lord redirected my steps, and I have to always remember that. Don't go back, look forward. Don't go backwards, look forward. But he came, and that's when he said, I want to give you an honorary doctorate. And I was just pleased as punch to get that honorary doctorate from Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. And after I received that, he was declining at that point. And he passed away several years later at 94 from Alzheimer's. And I would still go down and take him a lunch until it got to the point where, and he would just ask me the same question over and over again, type of thing. But, it was heartbreaking. My father passed away at the same age, 94, from Alzheimer's. It's one of the most insidious diseases. And now they're saying that it has a link to sugar intake. And you know what? It's just like people didn't have this stuff 150 years ago, but people didn't eat like they do today. Sugar is in everything. So, and my dad had ice cream every night. So, just saying.
Do you remember the quote that from that book that Shinazi said? If I'm pronouncing that right?
Semyaza, yeah. It was there's a bunch of quotes, and I actually quote Semyaza, or the entity posing as Semyaza. I think Semyaza is one of those spirits that are chained in the dark prisons in Tartarus where Jesus goes down to. So this might be, but you just don't, you don't know who you're dealing with. But Semyaza basically in the Everett Billy Mayer quote in the book, talks about who God is. And it's certainly not Jesus. It's the sort of the God of Star Wars. It's a God of fortresses, the God of force. It's really bizarre. Look, I got to get that book again, because some of the similarities between what the Book of Enoch and that entity appearing to Everett Billy Mayer. I mean, this is the coming great deception. This is what not coming. It's already here. We're being last week. We had three events, 2 whistleblowers, and the video from the Vegas guy who had a 10-foot alien in the back. Well, it wasn't an alien, but more than likely a fallen angel. In the backyard. What do we do with this? and they're trotting it out. I'm not making it up, and they're trotting it out like like gangbusters. So it's alarming.
I ordered your books, on the Trail of Nephilim, Counter Move, and the Cosmic Chess Match. But let's start with the Nephilim. Who are the Nephilim? What does the Bible say about them? And what have you learned over the years in terms of evidence of their existence?
Yeah, that's a 3-hour conversation. So it's like, but it is. I mean, that's my life's work. Genesis 6, Genesis 3:15 is always the starting point, and hats off to Gary Stearman on that, who taught us at the Nephilim Mounds Conference with Russ Disjar, Chief Joseph Riverwind, Fritz Zimmerman, and myself. And Gary lectured on Genesis 3:15, and there's a vignette. Adam and Eve have just fallen. They've eaten of the fruit. They've taken on the DNA of the dragon. The dragon is in one corner, Adam and Eve are in the other, and you got the pre-incarnate Christ who's talking to the dragon. Your offspring will be at enmity at war with the offspring of the woman. The one coming from the woman, the proto-evangelion, the Messiah, the first prophecy of Messiah that we get in the guidebook of supernatural, i.e. the Bible, is Messiah. It's gonna come, thousands of years later, but it's Messiah. He, Messiah, will crush your head. He's gonna kill you. You're gonna take your kingdom away from you. He will crush your head, you'll bruise his heel. That's the whole Bible. That's the entire biblical narrative right there. Now, most churches get the Messiah, but they don't get the seed war. They get the idea that the seed of the woman, they get that, but most of them never put it together that it's a seed war. It's the offspring of the dragon will be at war with the offspring of the woman 3 chapters later in Genesis 6. And by the way, the early church fathers did not believe in the Sethite theory. We'll get into that. They believed in what the text said, that the sons of God, excuse me, the B'nai Elohim, saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, took wives, plural, went into them. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards when the sons of God took women and went into them. These were the great men of renown. So that's Genesis 6. And we can tap dance around that till the cows come home. But sons of God is never translated the godly line of Seth. And the women of earth is never translated the hoochie mamas of Cain. It's not there. It's always fallen angels, women of earth. It's the seed war manifesting 3 chapters later. But unless we understand Genesis 3:15, when we get to Genesis 6, we're left scratching our heads. And by the way, I think it was Julius Africanus who started the whole Sethite theory, basically it's either the 3rd or the 4th century. So he comes trotting along and goes, oh, this is what it says. And of course, Augustine piles on that. Augustine completely just piles right on. And that's what we get for thousands of years. The book of Enoch makes it really clear that the sons of God, the fallen angels, saw the women of earth and went into them. If you were going to take one book out of the Bible, you'd eliminate Enoch 1. You take the book of Enoch out. You make sure that no one reads that because it amplifies exactly what happened, when it happened in the days of Jared, where it happened on Mount Hermon, Israel. Our Nephilim tour, we go there. We'll actually go to the throne of Baal on this tour, to the throne of Baal. We believe, and this is the work of a gentleman who will be lecturing there. His name escapes me. Please forgive me. But at the moment, his name escapes me. And I know it will come to me. But he's an archaeologist, and he's been there like 20 years. And he believes the transfiguration took place on Hermon, as I do. And that thing was lit up for hours. It wasn't this little 20-minute deal. Peter's going, this thing is probably all night long. And this just a light show up there. And this is why when they all come down off the mountain, there's a huge crowd at the base because they've watched the light show on Mount Hermon. And they all know what Hermon was and whose seat it was. It was Baal. It was the throne of Baal. So I'm not making this up. And the author's name is, he's going to be in office soon, Widner. And I think it's Thomas Widner. I've only seen him once, and we met at the airport several weeks ago, and he'll be lecturing on our tour. So please forgive me if you're watching this. Yeah, so the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. The Nephilim results in the flood. Then we get the Tower of Babel, where the language is changed. Why? Because the language, up till that point, everybody had one speech. And you get Nimrod, who's become Geborim, Nephilim, through ritualistic sex magic, and they're building a tower. And there's a real interesting little line in there, and I call it a supernatural clue. They built with brick instead of stone. They built with brick instead of stone. I mean, that verse is pregnant with meaning, because the entities before the flood were changed. The entities that came down and have the ability to shape the stone, like we see in places like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo and other, what we believe are pre-flood sites, no, it's no longer there. It's no longer duplicated. It's pre-flood, then it goes away. And what we get, is the next thing is the megaliths, the stone megaliths. And then from the megaliths, it goes into the dirt, the mounds that we see all over the world. And from there, it goes into the crop circles that we see now. So it's evolution of the language of the dragon and what he's doing. So the Nephilim, let me beat my mic while I cough and get some water. Sorry about that, Chief. The Nephilim are the progeny of the fallen angels and the women of earth. It's a hybrid being. It is soulless, in our opinion. It's never supposed to be on the planet, but it is on the planet. And wherever the Nephilim are present, God always deals with them the same way. No grace, no mercy, wipe them all out. Because they're soulless, and they're not supposed to be here. And they're in a fixed state. And that fixed state is taking on the character and the character and the, what's the other word I'm looking for? The mindset of the dragon. They're in a fixed state, as Russ Dizdar used to say. They're not interested in being saved. Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Nephilim are the progeny of fallen angels, women of earth, creating a hybrid. When the flood happens, they all get destroyed. They become spirits that wander the earth, always looking for something to get into. In order to manifest, they have to inhabit a person or an animal or an object. This is why when Jesus casts out the demons and they go, hey, we're legion, we are many, and you can't cast us into the abyss. It's not our time yet. How do they know that? I wrote about that in the Cosmic Chess Match. That's another supernatural clue. The fallen ones know what it looks like at the time of the end. Conjecture on my part, because I'm not going to sit down with Beelzebub tonight and have a 2-hour interview. That's never going to happen. So I don't know for sure, but it's conjecture, but it's based on years and years and years of research, and also what the biblical narrative says. How is it that the demons who are legion in that man go to Jesus and go, don't throw us into the abyss, it's not our time? How do they know that? How do they know that? How does the angel that appears to Daniel the prophet go, seal up the words in this book, Daniel, another supernatural clue. Seal up the words in this book, Daniel, men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth. Knowledge will increase. How does he know that? How does he know? Is it possible that time is fluid? That the time-space continuum as we know it is fluid? And that these entities, both the good guys and the bad guys, can travel up the timeline. They're not all knowing, and they don't know whether what they're seeing will actually come to pass. A good angel will. The bad, I don't know. But they know at some point in time that this is what is going to transpire. I mean, they have this, whether they can travel through time and see it, I don't know. They're not all knowing, we know that. They're not omnipresent, we know that. But I think they've got the ability to somehow see further up than we can.
I have a copy of a book. It's called The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons in the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up by Richard Dewhurst, Emmy Award-winning writer for HBO. In the book, he's reproduced hundreds of newspaper articles and other records dating back 400 years, as well as photos chronicling how thousands of giant skeletons have been unearthed throughout America, and yet the Smithsonian has allegedly covered up the evidence. You've also reproduced some of these old newspaper stories and other records in your books. What have you found in this regard, and what have you learned about what's happened here?
Well, Dewhurst is great in the sense that he's a researcher and he's got, a lot of research, a lot of pictures, but he's also taking from Fritz Zimmerman. Fritz Zimmerman's book predates Dewhurst by years, and Fritz's book is Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley, the Nephilim Chronicles. The Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. So, and Fritz has been places. Fritz has been all over, photographing the mounds, looking at the mounds, doing mathematical work on the mounds. As far as I know with Dewhurst, he's never been anywhere. I built on Fritz's work, and we went down all through South America, and I've been to places like Teotihuacan. I've been to Gilgal Raphaim in Israel, Stonehenge, England, Karnak, France, Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman. I've been to these places, Chaco Canyon. And then, of course, all the mounds like Cahokia. We were just in Cahokia last week, for crying out loud. A week ago today, I was standing on top of Monk's Mound in Cahokia, and I do not believe that Native Americans built it. Sorry, not going there. But that's another conversation. One of my biggest finds was the 9-foot skeleton, a picture that was found out on Catalina Island. I discovered the picture in the archives, and that those archives had been gone through, but the picture was there in an envelope in a museum box tucked away in the vault. And when I got access to it, the former curator said, "What do you want to see?" And I said, "Let me bring out the pictures." So he bought out 2 or 3 museum boxes with the pictures, and I looked at all of them. And within an hour, I was finding pay dirt. And I found that picture of Ralph Glidden standing in front, in the rear of a recently excavated grave, and in front of him was a very large skeleton. We had that skeleton examined by 3 researchers, experts, and they all put it right around 9 feet. So there's a difference between, going back like Mr. Dewhurst, with all due respect, because the book is worth reading. We're not going to disparage him. He's a researcher. He did great work. But when you find something in the archives, that, in my opinion, that's real research. That's real research, because I've done due diligence. I knew there was something that was just unveiled. Ralph Glidden's box of diary and notes had just been discovered. So cost me $1,000 donation to the museum, best $1,000 I ever spent. And I flew out there, and lo and behold, that became, so much work. Just like going down with the elongated skulls that you see in the background. Our team was the only team to extract DNA. The only Christian team. There's been another team that went down there. We extracted DNA from 58 skulls. We had it sequenced. It cost tens of thousands of dollars. And I want to thank my benefactors for donating a boatload of money that enabled us to do that. We're talking a boatload of money, because just in getting up to the starting line was tens of thousands of dollars. And then all the DNA testing and the numerous trips down to Peru, and it's just unbelievable. But what it showed was that the DNA, the haplogroups, the origin, the mitochondrial DNA of these elongated skulls found in Peru came from the Middle East, came from the Levant, came from Eastern Europe, came from the Baltic Sea. So that rewrites history.
And so I guess my question on that was, is it true that there's all these skeletons that have been found all around the world, and the Smithsonian has actually covered this up? They have records of this at other government agencies? Yeah,
Mondo Gonzalez, the co-host of Prophecy Watchers, and I did a interview with Mondo, and Mondo sort of did a deep dive on the Smithsonian. You can go online and read the Bureau of Ethnicity. You can read it for yourself. We found a 7-footer, an 8-footer, a 10-footer. It's all there. It's online, but they just count on the fact that people won't go. And then again, how long will it be before that's scrubbed and we can't find it at all anymore? And we've seen that, where information is there and then it's just scrubbed off the internet. How is that possible?
Do you believe these skeletons are Nephilim, or what are these skeletons of?
In my opinion, they are Nephilim. Yeah, especially the ones in Peru, because the origin is in the Middle East. They're not giants, but they're elongated skulls. And our our anthropologist on our team, Rick Woodward, I think it's conclusive in the sense that, when we deconstruct these guys, we see right here the zygomatic arch, very pronounced. We don't have features like this. So here's the sagittal suture, or here's the suture in the skull. The sagittal suture should go from here all the way back and dividing the two parietal plates. It doesn't do that. So it should go like this. We don't see any of that. And here's the rear of the skull, and this is the work of our anthropologist, Rick Woodward. There's the foramen magnum right here. And you can see very plainly that the foramen magnum is all the way to the posterior, all the way to the occipital plate. If it's any further back, it's outside the skull. Well, you can't deform a child and move the foramen magnum. You just can't do that. So that foramen magnum should be right about here, center of the skull, and it's not. So to us, it was a smoking gun that what we were looking at was some sort of genetic anomaly. And in our film on DNA, it's number 6 in the ongoing series of On the Trail of a Nephilim. And we've got surgeons and medical professionals and doctors and chiropractors and optometrists and archaeologists, anthropologists, this whole team, multidiscipline team, all stayed on the record. What we're looking at is something genetic.
And so these skeletons were probably Nephilim that died in the flood, or is it a combination of ones that survived after the flood?
There was a second incursion. And Dr. Thomas wrote about it in his book, Second Incursion. We know that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. So Moses is writing that thousands of years later after the fact. He could just say, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, pointing back to pre-flood. Nephilim were back to the earth those days. End of story, period. But that's not what he says. And also afterward. Now, there are scholars, some of them are a lot smarter than I am, that insist what Moses is talking about is the same period of time as the flood. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that at all, because the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. But then he elaborates, and also afterwards. And then he tells us how. When the sons of God saw the daughters of men and had sex with them. The whole book, Countermove, was a rebuttal of the idea that somehow Noah would mistake a woman that would be married to one of his sons, that she would carry the Nephilim gene on board the ark. Not buying it. That makes God a trickster. That makes the Lord not all-knowing, not all-seeing. It just doesn't. So he's going to wipe out the entire planet, but he's going to allow one person with the seed to come on the ark. Not buying it. But in the protocols of this heavenly war, the angels who leave their first estate can commingle the seed once again. Genesis 3:15. Where are they? They're chained in Tartarus. Where does Jesus go right after he dies? Where does he go? Out of all the places, you think that he would go up and show the Father and go, game over, we did it. No, it's not what he does. He goes to Tartarus, goes to the lower parts of the earth, and it's a proclamation to the fallen angels that are there. No jailbreak. You're not getting out. I just won. This checkmate. It's over. And by the way, and we owe this to Gil Zimmerman when we were talking to Thomas Widner about all this, about Mount Hermon and the throne of Baal, that Gil said, and I've never heard this before, the transfiguration is check. In the game of chess, you go check. You say that out loud, check. And you realize that your king is in danger. So you've got to move a piece, move the king, move your queen, get your bishop, take out the piece that is putting you in check, but you need to do something. Mount Hermon was check. And a little while later, checkmate was the cross.
Why do you believe that the Smithsonian or perhaps other government agencies have tried to cover up this evidence of these skeletons and other things that you've discovered over the decades?
Because it goes against the Darwinian paradigm, and Darwinism runs the planet. Darwinism is sacrosanct in academia and the scientific community. Everything hinges on the Darwinian paradigm. And the neo-Darwinists were looking at the Darwinian paradigm in light of the discovery of DNA, Watson and Crick, and going, well, this isn't going to work because you can take billions of years of prebiotic slop and you're never going to get the complexity of what we see with the oxyribonucleic double helix, the spiral of life, the DNA molecular structure. It's not going to happen. There's a creator. And that's why when Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins and he asks Dawkins, where do you think the first replicating molecule came from? Dawkins has no answer. He doesn't know, nor does anybody else. Fair statement. So Stein says, well, how do you think it could have come about? And immediately he goes into Star Wars. Well, I suppose it could have happened this way. A race of extraterrestrials in some distant galaxy rose to a very prominent place by some means of evolution. He's just making it up. He doesn't know. So we either believe the fallacy of the evolutionary theory, or in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made by him, and without him, nothing that was not made that was made. I mean, we either believe that or the fallacy of evolution. You can't believe in both of them. Theistic evolution is nonsense. God just started this thing and then just kind of stepped back and let it go. Nonsense. It doesn't jive with DNA. DNA is a complex coding system. So they're afraid of anything supernatural, because it points back to the veracity of the biblical narrative. So if you have giants running around, well, where did they come from? Oh, wait, that hails back and points back to what the biblical prophetic narrative states. That's why we're terrified of it. There are no giants. Go away. Native Americans built the mounds. The Inca were master stone builders. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about the 18.5-year lunar alignment. Don't worry about places like America Stonehenge, which show a connectivity to Chaco Canyon, Teotihuacan in Mexico, Machu Picchu in Peru, the Canary Islands out off the coast of Portugal, Stonehenge, England, and who knows how many other sites. We're working on a book with Dennis Stone on that. Because if you go there, you're looking at an outside agency they can't do this 4,000 years ago, because in order to do it, you got to be able to triangulate from the air. That's trigonometry. You've got to know trig and advanced geometry. You need to know the curvature of the Earth. And then you get the 18.5-year metonic lunar cycle, which is embedded in most of these sites. How was that done 4,000 years ago? They didn't know about it. Native Americans had no clue about the 18.5-year lunar cycle. They didn't know. And if they didn't know, quit trying to tell us that somehow Native Americans just did the geometry in our head. There's actually an article I have somewhere on my, as Rush Limbaugh said, stack of stuff here, which it would take me about 2 hours to find it. But it's from a woman who's Native American, First Nation, and we're not trying to disparage First Nation people, but to come up with the idea that, well, because obviously she's pushing back against my work. Where's the sacred buffalo skin that shows the drawing of the octagon mound? Where is it? And the octagon mound in Ohio is an unequal octagon. 2 of the sides are longer than the other 6. You're looking at advanced geometry. And then combined with that, look, let me just show you what I mean. So if I take a piece of paper and I draw an octagon on it, but I don't have a ruler and I don't have a protractor, okay? Don't have a compass. I have none of those things. It's like a goofy pen. So I'm going to draw an octagon, 8 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's my ridiculous looking octagon. Stupid looking. Okay, so I take this up to my geometry teacher. Here's my octagon, teacher, and she fails me. Why? Because there's no angles. I don't know the angles. I didn't apply geometric principles to the octagon, because you need a protractor and you need a compass and you need a ruler and you need to know the precise angle of that. That's geometry. Well, if you don't have that, you can't draw it on a piece of paper. And if you can't draw it on a piece of paper, pray tell, how does one do this, which in an octagon mound in Ohio, which encompasses 50 acres of land? How do you check your work? How do you even know what you're doing? I've been in that thing. And I could hear way over here, acres were way over there. There's something going on, but I have no idea what it is. But when you're in the air and you fly your drone 1,000 feet up, poof, the octagon, and it's precise. And the precision is unbelievable. So we're supposed to believe that Native Americans did this, built the octagon. In their heads, they did the geometry. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. And if they did do it, we'd hear that. The oral tradition would have been handed down through the centuries. It's not there. In fact, what we hear is the exact opposite. When the first white settlers come in, who built this? The natives go, we don't know, it was here when we got here. And we hear this over in other parts of the world, wherever we go. So what's at stake here is if First Nation people are not First Nation, then they're not First Nation. If they didn't do it, then who did? If they make statements like, we don't know it was here when we got here. Chief Wallace of the Shawnee stated on the record that the Shawnee did not build a separate mound. Then years later, she flipped. Oh yeah, we built a separate mound. Why? Because somebody said, well, if you're not First Nation, then you're not First Nation. Let's just be truthful here. And I'm not, people, and this is what the other side does all the time. All they do is resort to name call. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. You're an Islamophobe. You're a xenophobe. You're a racist. Well, why don't we sit down and talk about the ideas? Oh, you're afraid to do that. All you're going to do is just sling the mud and call me names because I'm going against the existing paradigm. Prove me wrong. The onus should not be on me. The onus should be on you, Native Americans. Where's the sacred buffalo skin? Where's the knowledge of geometry? It's not there. We're not disparaging you, your way of life, or your intelligence. That has nothing to do with it. We're just saying, if you didn't do it, then who the heck did? And this is where it gets into Fritz Zimmerman's book, the Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. And it gets into my book, which I'll show you in just a second, On the Trail of a Nephilim. Right there. 4 books in one. On the Trail 1, On the Trail 2, the DNA evidence, and Nephilim hybrid. So it's a lot of work. Ugh, and it's really heavy.
In the forward to the Vega conspiracy that you wrote, you mentioned that Jewish historian Josephus wrote about the Nephilim. What did Josephus say? And what have other prominent historical figures wrote about the existence of the Nephilim? What happened with Noah's flood, whether they returned after the flood, and what role they will play in the last days?
Yeah, Josephus talks about that as his writing, first century, that the bones of the Nephilim are openly on display in Jerusalem. Now, this is conjecture on my part. I've actually written about it in other books, but it's a possibility. If they're openly on display, where are they? Well, they can't be on the Temple Mount. They can't be in the outer court because that would defile the temple. However, they could be right outside where the Temple Mount was, let's say a block away. Complete conjecture on my part. So Jesus comes out of a temple with the disciples, and as Chuck Missler says, he gives what's called a confidential briefing to what things are going to look like at the end of the age. Where is his location when he does that? We don't know. There's not a map where it says, and then Jesus was here when he said this, because what really makes that really cool is he could have said, it'll be like the days of Noah when I return, and gesture back to the Nephilim skeletons, which are on display near the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. We know that from Josephus. Now that's conjecture, but it could have happened. I mean, there's certainly, he made that statement somewhere. And if the skeletons are behind him or right next to him, it'll be like the days of Noah when I return. Now that's, people go, well, you're totally reading into that. And I admit that. I am totally reading into that, but it's a possibility. We don't know where he was when he uttered that. We don't know. Whereas when he goes to the pool of Siloam, we know where the pool was. We know we can pinpoint the location. He's not in the temple. He's outside the temple, but we don't know where. So it's colorful.
And if that's true, what do you think Jesus' statement means, that as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man? What do you think that means in light of that?
Well, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus is saying that, there is no New Testament. So get rid of that. It's not there. All he's drawing from is the Tanakh, what we would call the Old Testament. The Jews know exactly, all the rabbis, all the Jews, 2,000 years ago, they know exactly what's going on in the days of Noah. They all know about the Nephilim. That's why the skeletons are outside the temple. They all know about it. No one's going like, well, maybe it's the Sethite theory that we should be examining here. No one's doing that. So when Jesus says they'll be like the days of Noah, in my opinion, they know exactly what he's talking about. Why does he pinpoint the days of Noah? Because the days of Noah is where all the, as Chuck Missler used to say, the mischief began. That's where it starts, which results in the flood. Genesis 3:15 is always the starting point. If we don't get Genesis 3:15 right, people don't have an understanding of their Bibles. They don't understand who the Antichrist is, who is the seed of the dragon, the son of perdition. That's who he is. I believe is alive on the earth.
And in UFO Disclosure, he wrote, they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. Who has been here for thousands of years? Who are they? Is there credible evidence that UFOs and aliens actually exist? What is really happening?
There are cave paintings with the grays, the big heads and the large black eyes. It's been this cat and mouse game going on for thousands of years. The cat and mouse game continues. Nothing's new, except that now they're rolling out disclosure in ways that we've never seen, which is absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it. So it's the breeding program has been going on for thousands of years. At the cross, it changes at the cross because it spells the defeat of the dragon. And then we have to bump up into modernity, the book of Daniel. Their seed, chapter 2, verse 43, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. Their seed, whose seed? Who are they? Well, it's not men. So whose seed are we mingling with? Go back to Genesis 3:15. It tells you exactly whose seed. Your offspring, your seed will be at enmity with the offspring, the seed of the woman. The one coming from the woman, the proto-evangelium, crush your head. You will bruise his heel. Seal up the words in this book, Daniel, till the time of the end. Men will go to and fro over the face of the earth. Knowledge will increase. We're here. It's exactly where we are. Knowledge increases exponentially. As I'm speaking, men and women are running to and fro over the face of the earth. We're here. So the words are no longer sealed, and we can discern what their meaning is.
And in chapter, in the book UFO Disclosure, you also talk about the abduction phenomenon. What have you learned about this? What's happening there?
In our fourth film of our ongoing UFO series, there's 5 films in that series right now. We're working on number 6 in post-production and number 7 in post-production simultaneously. Number 6 is on the counter mutilations. Number 7 is on the Roswell event. And what we have from that will blow people's minds, but I digress. Number 4 is on the abduction phenomena. And we sit down with 4 people who have been taken. Emil and Al, 2 guys, taken from a very early age, abused sexually. Sperm was taken from both men. And then 2 women. Ovum is taken from the women. One of them, she was taken around 6 years old. And she becomes the tent post, the center of our film, because in that she talks about being impregnated by these entities 3 different times. And in the third trimester, the third month of the first trimester, she's re-abducted and they take the baby again. They take the child from her. And this is high strangeness. And where do you go with this information? Who can you tell? Because when you go to the emergency room and they do a ultrasound, there's nothing there. There's no heartbeat, there's no fetal tissue, nothing. So how did that happen? So it's the most closely guarded secret in the universe, in my opinion. And that's why our films in the UFO series, that's why they're so important, because it shows what's happening in modernity. It hails back to Daniel 2:43, the mingling of the seed, which is exactly what we see happening right now as I speak.
And chapter 5, are hybrids real? You explore Genesis 6 and Genesis 3:14-15. The verse that talks about the seed of the serpent. And about hybrids, you mentioned Chuck Misler in this chapter. What did he tell you, and what have you learned about this question? Are hybrids real? What is happening?
I remember Chuck, when I sat down and interviewed Chuck Misler, I said, Chuck, what about the hybrids? Without missing a beat, he said, oh, the dragon, Satan's outnumbered 2-1, he's building an army, just like that. Just exactly the way I said it. Chuck, I'll get out for you. Chuck, what do you think about the hybrids? Are they real or not? Oh, Satan's outnumbered 2-1, he's building an army. Just like that. There was no hesitation, no equivocation, just boom. Satan's outnumbered 2-1, he's building an army. That's what they are. These are, rebuilding the army, and when he shows up, they're going to play a prominent role in the last days when they manifest.
Do you believe that these clones, or this mixing of the seed, are these entities that are on the earth now? Or are they under the earth? Is it another dimension? What's happening? What have you learned here? What do you believe is happening?
I'll just tell you a story, and we hear stories like this. People are coming forward with them. So a man is at a fast food restaurant. He's in a pickup truck. His buddy is sitting next to him in the passenger seat. So they go to window 1, they place their order. They go to window 2, they pay, and now they're waiting for the food. Lady reaches over with the bag. He reaches up, takes the bag, hands it to his buddy. He goes back to the window, looks up, gets ready to take his order. Her face shifts. Half of it's reptilian, not reptilian, but half of it's the face of an alien, iridescent. And they look at each other, and she realizes that she's been outed. She covers her face and runs away from the window. And the coworker is kind of going like this as she runs by. That's just one. They're here. They're walking amongst us. There's no doubt.
In chapter 6 delves into the mark of the beast. How does the mark of the beast mentioned in Revelation 13 connect to the UFO phenomena, extraterrestrials, Nephilim, and what you've learned in your research over the years?
Yeah, this is the work of the late Richard Shaw, who passed away 4 years ago today, which is unbelievable. And Rick and I made 11 films together. He was a good friend. And we took out the implant from a man called Emil, who later on appears in number 4 of our UFO abduction phenomena film, which came out this year, by the way. And if you haven't seen that, streaming.lamarzulli.net, it'll blow your mind. Absolutely blow your mind. We took out the implant. Whoever is putting the implants in these people has spent an awful amount of time and energy and resources in doing this. And so we believe that these are the prototypes of the mark of the beast. They're not the mark of the beast yet, but they're prototypes. There's an evolution of these things. There's an evolution. And it was high strangeness in the operating theater when we tried to take the implant out. The thing was cloaked. One prayer changed everything, and then we were able to find it.
Well, in chapter 8, deep underground military bases and UFO retrieval teams, you explored the alleged connection between aliens and our government. But what have you learned in this regard? What is the government doing underneath the earth?
Well, it's a perfect place to hide, deep underground military bases. We've heard about this from whistleblowers, from experiencers, for people who have actually been taken to places like this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We know that they're there. We know that our government has stated just last week, as we're talking, just last week, the government has crashed UFOs in their possession. So, it's no longer, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist waving my arms frantically going, hey, this is the coming great deception. Now all the pieces are falling into place.
And but while much of the public was long skeptical about the UFOs and aliens over the decades, new polls now show a high percentage of people believe UFOs and aliens are real, and more people now believe in UFOs and aliens have a biblical worldview. We've all seen countless alien movies and UFO documentaries over the decades. Today, top government officials are releasing information about what the government knows about UFOs, UAPs, and extraterrestrials. Would you bring us up to date? What has been released, and what are your thoughts about what's happening now?
Well, we sort of skirted around the issue a little bit. Last week, there were two whistleblowers that came forward and stated, oh, yeah, the United States government has crashed UFOs in their possession. Well, Bob Lazar came out and told about that back in the 90s. So from someone like me, it's old news, yawn. But it's breaking news. Whistleblower comes out and risks all. It's the managed agenda. They're rolling this thing out. And it's the rungs of a disclosure ladder. Up and up and up and up and up we go until full disclosure happens.
In Revelation, let's see. For many years, people like Dr. Thomas, yourself, and others have pondered whether UFOs and aliens could be part of the great deception the Bible speaks of, this powerful delusion mentioned in Philippians 2:11. But what are your thoughts? What is happening in regard? Is it possible we could see, some kind of alien contact, alien invasion, contact with ET? And if so, do you believe this could be the powerful delusion that the Bible talks about?
I believe wholeheartedly that yes, this is the coming great deception. This is the strong delusion. Why does he send it? Because they did not believe the truth. What is the truth? We've already quoted the scripture. In the beginning was the Word, and with God in the beginning. All things were created by him. Without him was not anything not made that was made. So we either believe that or the fallacy of the evolutionary theory, which has never been proved and never will be. But it's just so ignorant and arrogant when you really think about it. That because they did not believe the truth, God sends or allows the strong delusions, the coming great deception. When they show up, everything changes. Life as we know it completely changes on the planet.
In Revelation 9:11, Pastor Paul Bagley and I explore how current events connect to the book Revelation. We also delve into this intriguing 9th chapter of the book Revelation, which talks about the opening of the bottomless pit, release of demonic entities upon the earth to kill a third of humanity. But what are your thoughts about this chapter and how it may link to all the research that you've done over the years?
It's kind of hard to tell because we know that something's up here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the book of Revelation is a place that I never want to find myself residing in the natural. My personal belief is the church is taken out of the rapture. We're not appointed to wrath because you've walked with me. I'm paraphrasing, but because you've walked with me and focused on me, I saved you out of this time of Jacob's trouble. So it's the reason why it's called the time of Jacob's trouble, because it deals with Israel. It's not dealing with the church, and people just skip over that. It's the time of Jacob's trouble, not Stephen or Bob. It's Jacob. And Jacob's a Jew. It has to do with the house of Israel. And unless Israel were regathered back in its land, you couldn't jump into the book of Revelation. But now that Israel's back, this thing could happen sooner than we think.
So if there is some kind of cloning, breeding program going on, the seed of the woman, this is Satan raising up some kind of armies of the Antichrist for the last days. Do you think there's a connection to that and Revelation 9? And other parts of the book Revelation that talk about these great wars that are going on and demonic entities upon the earth and all kinds of things of that nature.
Yeah, and that's what people don't understand, that we don't want to be here for that. I mean, you can talk about taking your AK and your stash of food and hunkering down. God bless you if you want to do that. I don't want to be on this planet when this thing happens. All hell breaks loose. It's the time of the dragon. Woe to the inhabitants of earth, because the devil, the dragon, the accuser of your brethren, is cast down to earth, and he knows his time is short. Oh boy. And there's another proof text. How does he know his time is short? How does he know?
In the book Revelation 9:11, we also explore the transhumanism movement, CERN, AI, and how it connects to the rise of the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. What are your thoughts in this regard? What have you learned about the connections between these different things?
Well, AI is just, what was it, just last week? AI gave its first sermon in a church. It's like, are you kidding me? You know, and I've heard reports that AI is telling us now Jesus isn't God. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? It's all, Troy, it's all connected like this, all of it. Absolutely connected in every way possible. And that's what makes me just wonder how close we really are before we go up.
So this whole thing about the mixing of the seed of the woman, this battle that began back in Genesis 3, the Nephilim, God wiped them out in the flood. They returned because, I guess, fallen angels were interbreeding with women afterward. And then today you have, artificial intelligence, you have CERN, all these experiments, you have transhumanism. We're going to become as gods and supposedly live for hundreds of years. And then the Bible talks about the mark of the beast and the Antichrist. So you believe all of this fits together. It's all part of what Satan's plan is. Essentially, I guess he believes he's going to defeat God. And
yeah, I mean, this is my research. Our mission statement is to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King, Jesus. And that's what we do. That's our mission statement. I think we're close. The stuff that the media is rolling out, frankly, I never thought I would see in my lifetime, and it's here, which is blowing my mind. And I know a lot of the church is starting to wonder what's going on. But you know what? The church is ignorant for the most part. They won't deal with it. Even now with everything that's going on, the seeker-friendly churches are just seeker-friendly. They're not interested in ruffling any feathers. My people perish for lack of knowledge.
And then, so then this has been an incredibly fascinating interview. And, thank you very much for doing this. Finally, in our book, Revelation 9:11, we offer hope for people. And although we're seeing many of the things that Jesus and the prophets predicted coming to pass in our time, we know from the Bible that in the end, God wins, that we're victorious, and they believe in Jesus, have been forgiven their sins, and spend eternity with him in heaven. What words of hope and comfort would you like to leave our readers and our audience with today?
Well, that what was written is coming to pass. What was foretold is unfolding. Everything is in the guidebook of supernatural. Everything, the Bible. The answers that we seek are right there. Jesus warns us that the elect would be deceived if that were possible, that it'd be like the days of Noah when he returned, which immediately points us back. What differentiates the days of Noah? Really, what the red flag there is the presence of the fallen angels, the mingling of the seed, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. That's my life's work. That's become my life's work. And I realize how important it is. But the hope is that, the armies of heaven rode with him on white horses, dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Out of his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. So we're coming down. The armies of the Antichrist are all over. They're looking up. They think in their hubris that somehow they can defeat the King of Kings. Here's the problem with that. And he holds all things together, right? So he is the image of the unseen God, the firstborn of creation. For by him all things were created, invisible, visible, in heaven and on earth, over thrones, dominions, rulers of authority. All things were created by him and for him, and he's before all things, and he holds all things together. Conjecture on my part. He's writing down that sharp sword. He just stops holding them together. We're not lopping heads like Lord of the Rings. We're not doing that. and they basically bleed out. And that's why the blood is like up to the bridle. All he does is he just stops holding together. And it's like, the way it was in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the way they melted. I think that's kind of what we're looking at. And the Bible tells us that their eyes melt in their sockets. Some people go, well, that's got to be a nuclear event. Could be. I don't know what it is. We'll find out. But he holds all things together. What if he just stops holding all things together? It's just like, he just goes, you're never going to change. I get it. You know what? I'm not holding you together. What are the armies of heaven, that white horse police force, as I call it? When we come down with him, you've got roughly half the population of Earth, 8 billion people that are still here. So out of the 8 billion, 4 billion have perished in the tribulation. You're down to 4 billion people. Telecommunications are still working. People see it. Every eye will see them. And I know people laughed at Pat Robertson for saying that years ago, but that's probably true. It's probably exactly the way. He's going to do a victory lap, maybe. I get that. Every eye will see him because that's where all the cameras will be. So every eye will see him. Why not technology? Because technology is being used. So the White Horse Police Force, which is what I call it, lands. You got 4 billion people who have no idea what's going on. None. Now you've got a remnant that's there, that tribulation saints, I get that. But you got the majority of people, who's this guy? What is he doing here? We thought the extraterrestrial. What happened to the Antichrist? They won't call him the Antichrist. What happened to him? Who could make war with the beast? Blah, 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 blah. He goes, Anderson, you're on your white horse. Anderson, I want you to go over to Ohio, in the Cleveland area. I want you to rule Cleveland, Akron, and Cincinnati. Those 3 cities. You're gonna be in charge. You're gonna rule. Go, and you go. You get on your flying white horse and you fly to Cleveland, and you rule and reign with the Messiah for 1,000 years. So when he says you will do greater things than these, so many people in the charismatic movement, we got to do greater works. What if that's for the millennium? I'm not saying I believe in healing. I'm not saying that healing doesn't happen and we see miracles. I'm not saying that at all. Yes, it happens. Yes, we should seek them. Yes, we should, but not chase after them. We should follow the leading of the Spirit of the living God and then see what he wants to do in that particular setting of people. But greater works than these. So Troy, you're over in Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Akron. You're ruling all that, and Columbus, by the way. So you got 4 cities you're in charge of. You're preaching the gospel, you're healing the sick, and you're raising the dead. It's exactly what you're doing. You're in a glorified body, and you're out there. You're doing it. You're absolutely doing it all day long. You don't need to sleep. Guess what? There's no crack house in Cleveland anymore. No more child trafficking because you're on top of it. And you're ruling those 4 cities, and you're in constant contact with the king. That's what I think it is. That's what I think it is. And we bring the kingdom of heaven on earth.
Wonderful. That's a beautiful, beautiful picture. Very, very helpful. Well, it's been an incredible honor to interview you here, and I appreciate this very much. For the people who watch the video, would you like to tell them about, how they can get a hold of some of your books and watch your movies and find out more about yourself?
Our YouTube channel, we're probably, by the time you get this, we'll be up over 200,000 people finally. I still think we're shadow banned on some level and kept down, but whatever. We're just thankful for the people that show up. That's L.A. Marzulli. Our website is lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. 13 books, 25 films. Our streaming site, where you can just download the videos for less than a cup of coffee, is streaming. .lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. That's it. I'm working on book 14, and we're working on films 26 and 27. So we're on a roll.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an amazing interview.
Thank you, Troy. God bless you, sir.
Yeah, God bless you.
In Revelation 9:11, Paul Begley and Troy Anderson boldly confront the pressing questions on many people's minds. Are we living in the end times? How do current events line up with biblical prophecies about the future? This book offers stunning and thought-provoking insights that connect passages from the book of Revelation to today's headlines. From the COVID-19 pandemic to artificial intelligence to UFOs, the authors examine how modern developments may be paving the way for the Antichrist and one world government. This book will give you much to think about regarding the state of the world and the ultimate direction of history. Revelation 9:11 is a clear call to prepare spiritually for whatever lies ahead. An inspiring and encouraging quote from Pastor Jimmy Evans, founder of EndTimes.com and author of Tipping Point, "The end is here." Thank you, visionary Pastor Jimmy Evans, for your inspiring words. Join us as we embark on an illuminating journey into the prophetic with renowned Bible prophecy expert Pastor Paul Begley and the prolific Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist Troy Anderson. Confront pressing questions of our time and discover hope for the future. Don't miss out. Order your copy of Revelation 9:11 now and prepare to be inspired, enlightened, and empowered. For more information, visit www.revelationwatchers.com and delve deeper into the insights awaiting you. Don't miss this opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of the book of Revelation and its impact on our world. Order Revelation 9:11 on Reginery Publishing, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target.com, Walmart, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, or most anywhere books are sold, and be part of the journey towards greater awareness, hope, and encouragement in the midst of challenging times. Additionally, prestigious bookstores like Harvard Bookstore and Book Soup in Hollywood carry the book. Take the next step in your exploration today.